I am the technology and transformation capability leader at Aviva. So hello, everybody. I've been leading teams for 20 plus years all around the world, across 70 different countries, worked with over 100 different MNC clients. Enough about me. If you want to know more about me, look me up on LinkedIn. Everybody knows me from LinkedIn. So more importantly, let's move on to our panel of speakers. And we have an incredible group of speakers today. So let me start with us first, who is Virginia Tan, who you can see on the screen right now. So Virginia is the founding partner of Teja Ventures, which is the first gender lens VC fund for emerging Asia. But that's not all. She's also co-founder of HealthTech, which is the world's largest startup competition for women in technology, and also the founder and former president of Lean in China, one of China's leading non-profit platforms for women. There's also a Lean in chapter in Singapore for those that are interested, and highly likely in any of the markets that our participants are in. So if you have not yet made yourself familiar with that, please do so. And it's also a great book. Right. Not only is Virginia all of those things, she has a background in law and finance and has worked across Europe, Middle East, Africa, Asia, South America, for a couple of well-known magic law firms, Clifford Chance and Allen and Overy. And in 2020, Virginia was selected by the Rockefeller Foundation as one of 8 next generation leaders, and also made Singapore's 100 Women in Tech inaugural list. And if not only that, she was also named by Fast Company as one of 100 most innovative people in business in China, and by Prestige as one of Singapore's 40 under 40. If I recall, also a global shaper by the World Economic Forum. So welcome, Virginia. Very excited to hear your thoughts today.
Thank you,
Lee. Next up, we have Dr. Amina Sugimoto, who is co-founder and CEO of Fermata, Inc., which is a leading femtech ecosystem in Japan, in combination with Fermata Inc. Fund, which is an investment vehicle for global femtech startups. Someone I can relate to, definitely an international citizen, born in Asia, raised in Africa, educated in Europe. Definitely I'm not even sure if we call that a third culture kid, but definitely a world citizen. And Amina's made it her mission to bring about a paradigm shift in healthcare, to promote better access to medicine across the globe. She's also obtained a doctorate degree in public health and health economics at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, and also joined a social impact focused VC, Mistletoe Fund, which is based where she is in Tokyo, as their healthcare innovation producer. So welcome to you, Dr. Amina.
Thanks a lot. That was incredible. Thanks.
Hey. Our third panelist is Agnes Wun, who is co-founder and CEO of UFast. So Agnes has been 15 years of corporate and innovation experience working in workforce planning, software development, business transformation for Fortune 500 and listed companies. She's worked for my old company of Accenture, ABB, Gazprom, Marketing, CK Infrastructure, V-Power Group, the list goes on. And I imagine if she included her clients in that, it'd be even longer. She's been responsible for design, costing and project management for multi-million-dollar IT and engineering transformation projects, and in turn has saved millions of dollars of operational efficiency and KPI outperformance as well. And I'm told Agnes is also a huge math geek. So she has MBAs, masters and bachelor degrees in a whole host of different science, tech and mathematical related topics, and is also a chartered engineer and chartered accountant. So, very, very excited to hear from Agnes as well. Agnes?
Thank you for your introduction.
Cool. And then our last panelist, I'm not even sure if I need to introduce you, Sabrina, but I'll do so anyway. So Sabrina Ho, as I'm assuming most of you know, is founder and CEO of Half the Sky, which is Asia's leading career platform for women. After more than a decade of working in the recruitment industry across Asia. Sabrina bit that bullet and went on that entrepreneurial journey and founded Half the Sky, which is a career and headhunting platform that connects female professionals with equal opportunities employers. There's jobs across various industries, 14 different countries, companies like JP Morgan, DuPont, IBM, Johnson Controls, all among the list there. And I'm a huge fan of this personally. I mean, I've known Sabrina for a little while now. We've reached out as well in a professional capacity, but I really like Half the Sky's mission. Very much on that desire to create that level playing field for women, and help millions of women navigate not just finding a job, but the future of work and the whole piece that encompasses. It's a wonderful cause. And Sabrina's work has, been featured all over the place, LinkedIn, Channel News Asia, Money FM here in Singapore, Elle Magazine. I'm not going to list all of them. I'll be here for the next 45 minutes, but welcome as well, Sabrina. And thank you for Half the Sky for setting this up. So on that note, let's get started. As I say this, I'm in Singapore. Sabrina's in Singapore. I think a couple of other speakers are in Singapore. We're just on the verge of a potential second lockdown. We can't get away from COVID and the pandemic. So let's start with dealing with the pandemic. It's definitely an item of the day. So I guess my first question on this for our panel is, what has been the biggest impact on your respective industries, but also what do you think that will lead to over the next 1 to 3 years? What's going to be the changes, the impacts, and so on? Let's start with Dr. Amina. Over to you.
Cool. Hi. Hello, everyone. So Japan as well, I think the new strains of virus coming in, and we're sort of in a lockdown until the end of this month. But so I'm in the industry called femtech, and for those of you who doesn't know what femtech is, it's a sort of emerging market that basically tries to solve challenges, issues around women's health using technology. Now, 3 or 4 years ago when I started this, tried to sort of, spread the word, trying to make this into an actual industry within Japan, no one really listened to me. Even when I was at the venture capital and tried to invest in a startup that's sort of trying to solve women's health, my colleagues were like, oh, is it going to make money? Like, how are you going to monetize it? So honestly, for about 2 years, I was sort of alone. And what happened during COVID in Japan is that, for example, when we had the first lockdown about a year ago, pads disappeared from supermarket together with toilet papers. And that went on, the toilet paper itself went on the news, but no one talked about pads. And then people started to question, like, why are we not talking about pads? It disappeared. And then, how things should be, how life was before, it's completely changed, right? Because of COVID. And it kind of sort of changed the sort of environment around women's health as well, that people will start to realize, like, okay, this shouldn't be a taboo. Why are we making it a taboo? And then the environment around women's health in Japan started to change gradually. And what the biggest change was during I think about 6 months ago, I don't know if you're aware, but we're apparently gonna have Olympics coming up in about 2 months. And the head of the Olympic Committee, who was about 7 years old man, a politician at the time, basically made a statement during a Zoom call, in a public Zoom call, that we shouldn't be having women on the panel because they talk too much. And that basically sort of fired up the whole conversation about not just women's health, but then why are we not talking about, like, if the government wants to include women into the workforce and at the same time increase the number of babies, we probably should not keep it as a taboo. So yeah, in a way, the whole conversation around women's health because of COVID changed in Japan, and if it wasn't COVID, I don't think where we are now. If I answer your question, Lee.
Wow, no, definitely, and great anecdote there as well. Wonderful. And let's get Virginia. What are your thoughts
on how COVID has on the impact on our industry?
Yeah.
Impact on the industry and just what you see happening over the next few years as a result.
It's really interesting. As you know, I'm based in Singapore, and Singapore has gone into semi-lockdown. Last couple of days, actually, not full lockdown, but semi-lockdown. How has our industry been impacted? So I see it both from a investor and investee perspective. So I think people are just, obviously much more used to, doing deals online. So in many ways, greater trust, because we have no other choice but to trust. So whether someone's investing in our fund or our fund is investing into investees, whereas previously we would only have felt comfortable doing a deal, face to face, like going to Indonesia, for example. Now, I think, all of us are just getting used to the fact that, okay, you know what, this is it. And, it's a huge change. The second piece, I think, is that something that we've noticed is that our focus is really on digital, investments, digital economy investments. We really focus on what we call the female economy. But what we're noticing is also, certain trends, things like sustainable consumption, mental health, healthy eating. The pandemic has actually, sort of re-emphasized the focus on a lot of these verticals that we've been investing in anyway. And because of the intersection between a lot of these trends, women as first adopters of these types of consumption patterns, as well as, the rise of the digital economy, what we've actually seen is a lot of these investments actually really take off, through the roof. It's not something, I think these were things that we would have invested in anyway, but I think the pandemic has actually really accelerated the growth of these things. And increasingly, like I said, I see women as actually really drivers of this kind of growth and revenue. So in terms of the industry that I'm in, which is venture capital, the particular focus on what we call the she economy, I think in many ways, COVID has been a game changer for us in a positive way and will continue to be. Because I think in times of crisis, people focus on what is core and actually what is important. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Great answer. And then Agnes, any follow-ons from that? What have you seen?
Oh, thanks for Lee for asking. So I think definitely COVID has accelerated digitalization across industries. As what we do video interviews with AI technology, and more clients are actually coming to us instead of we chasing them. So that's one good thing about being in this COVID world. That's the only thing that's good, which is people have no choice, but they have to go online and do video for interviews. For example. So we executed a few projects, big and small, across IT, F&B, retail, even healthcare. And I think what surprised us is that whoever would get the shortlist by the recruiter, in-house recruiter, are those who really passionate for the company that they're going to join, and they really show what it means to be in that industry. Yeah. So I think apart from all those digitalization, I think human passion, is the number one so-called competencies that all the recruiters are looking for in a job seeker perspective. It's passion.
Wonderful. And I guess that's a nice segue over to you, Sabrina.
Okay, I'm going to make it a little bit quick. So I think from my perspective, running Half the Sky, career platform for women, in the early stage of the pandemic, we saw major cutbacks by companies in terms of hiring and an increase in retrenchment, something that was unprecedented and created a high degree of uncertainty for many workers. But over the last few months, we actually have seen a stabilization in the job market and an increase in the job postings, especially for technology-related roles. So, and I think for me, it's also been very clear because of the pandemic, majority of the companies adopt remote and flexible working arrangements, something that has proven to be a success actually in what has been a huge global experiment so far. I think it's been a year and a half. It's been a huge success, I have to say. And and what makes me really think is why there was so much resistance to provide the flexible or remote working in the first place. And I think for me, the major change that we see in the job market over the next 1 to 3 years, I think there are a few changes. Working in an office could become a status symbol. Standard 9 to 5 office hours could become a routine of the past. And number 3 change that I would see is the workplace could become more equitable for women. So it's great news for all of us. And automation could be accelerated. And the last change that I would see for the next 1 to 3 years will be there will be an emphasis on skills over paper qualifications.
And I was on mute there. So the joys of the modern world. So I think that's the catchphrase of 2020, but sadly, I think it's going to be the catchphrase of 2021 as well. I'm on mute. So I definitely agree with everything that's been shared. And let me get the views of the panel on something else. I mean, in many countries, but both developed and developing, the pandemic has exposed weaknesses in not just healthcare infrastructure, but also wealth and gender inequalities. There's been arguments that it sent women's economic progression backwards. What can organizations do to help this? Let me start with you, Virginia.
I think what the data actually shows us is that during the pandemic, I think it was women. A lot of women actually lost frontline work. I think they were first to lose jobs, and then on the second piece, was that they carried they had to shoulder sort of unequal sort of caregiving burden, especially since everybody was at home. So in many ways they had to do both jobs, right, and carry it for everybody else. The third thing I saw was everything from, I think a lot more the rise in domestic abuse. I think is this third piece. And then I think the fourth one, something that I really focus on a lot, was that for women in business, women who are entrepreneurs in particular, apart from all the things that we just said about, uncapped pay burden and all of that stuff, I think women entrepreneurs were disproportionately in retail and in a lot of sectors which were, sort of much more adversely impacted by the pandemic. I think, what can organizations do? I mean, I can't speak for, I think, all organizations. I think in our organization, as a venture capital fund, we actually stepped up the investing during the pandemic, actually not decreased. We really doubled down. We took more risks than we probably would have usually. Because I think a time of, they say never waste a crisis, right? A crisis is also time for opportunity, for untapped opportunity, which in many ways it addresses a lot of the gaps that a crisis actually brings up. So, during the pandemic, I'll give a couple of examples. Actually, we more heavily invested, I think, in women and entrepreneurs. We invest in male and female entrepreneurs at Teja, but we have about 70% female entrepreneurs, and so we more heavily invested in them, and we even sort of decreased our check size to go earlier and to go into in ways more risky things, because we felt that these were opportunities. I'll give two examples. We invested in a company called Burgreens in the middle of the pandemic last year. They were F&B originally, and so as you can imagine, hit. They went around a lot to many VCs. No VC essentially would fund that. But what we really saw was the opportunity in these founders, very young founders. They really wanted to launch consumer packaged goods, frozen food, and not just become an F&B. So even though, they had not done that yet, but we believed enough in their vision to sort of put down, that first check. And, and I think within 3 months, they had their entire CPG operation running. They ended the year EBITDA positive, and money's been sort of flowing in ever since, but we had to take that first step. Another company we put in money to, a very small check, essentially was a company focused on sustainable consumption. So really refillable FMCG in Indonesia, a company called Cyclus. And again, I think it was in the heart of that pandemic that I feel like the Indonesian government actually doubled down and said, hey, you know what, we need to eradicate plastic. It's killing us. 70% consumption by 2030. And so, companies like Cyclus, they essentially help to sort of eradicate, they're eradicating 100 million sachets of plastic a year just by selling cooking oil and soap and dishwashing liquid, without packaging, right? But again, these are risks that probably a lot of VCs probably wouldn't take. But at times like this, I feel you have to double down. The other thing as well is what we saw on the technology front. So, what we noticed was a lot of women were losing work. So one of the things that one of our other portfolio companies doing, and that really actually sustained them all throughout 2020, was that we have a company called Shiro's in India. And essentially they really scaled their remote work program. So basically what they were doing essentially were helping companies onboard remote workers, all women, into certain types of positions, and what we notice is that in times like this, where a lot of physical work is not possible, but anything digitally enabled can actually help women actually get back into work. In some ways, I feel like the shift towards flexible, contingent, and remote work, even though a lot of women are actually losing physical jobs, in the long run, I think is actually a positive trend for a lot of women, because this shift towards this kind of work has always, will allow more women to actually work in a longer way, in a longer term, because women are always the ones who've had to shoulder unequal burden and therefore need that flexibility more. So I think something that more organizations can do is to really consider how flexible, remote, and contingent work is it's a longer term part of their plans, not just in response to the pandemic, which I believe is already happening anyway.
Cool, great answer. And thank you for sharing those examples. They were really, really insightful. Amina, could you, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I actually do agree with everything that Virginia said. I was actually quite amazed to hear that you guys actually invested more and took the risk. And I wonder how many VC capitalists, venture capitalists are out there in Japan who actually did that or had a courage to do that. For me, I think I started to see, I can only talk about the industry that I'm in around women's health, but I think of the inequality, the situation the women's in, that sort of exists in Southeast Asia as well as in Japan and across the world. It was there, but it was never being discussed, or there was no number. There was a conversation around how 70% of full-time employees in Japan are not, they're contractors. So they're full-time contractors. So they're working full-time, but they don't have the same sort of support from the company. And the number came up because of the COVID. And then now there are multiple big multinational companies in Japan that start to sort of revisit, to redesign the environments, what benefits that they should provide. There's now a conversation with the government now that for the yearly health checkup, there's no item about women's health. So I don't know about in Singapore, but in Japan, the whole items to go and check your weight and the cancers and all that, it's for general health. So there's no specific sort of item that focus on women's health or men's health. And they're now considering to put that in. So big companies, small companies, big companies, I think it's really important to it's a good opportunity for them to redesign the working environment, including benefits for their employee, as well as the big companies especially can work with, and it has a power and influence to work with the government to change policies around employee benefits and so forth.
Oh, thank you. Agnes.
Yes. it's been eye-opening to hear from Virginia and Amingo about that perspective on how we can do it better for putting the inequality of income for women. I think from our perspective, statistics shows that women earn less than men. Yeah, and that's when we do the AI training for our model. That's one of the things that probably we should do, which is to take this element into consideration when we do the scoring for competencies. And that's called the biasing of the model, so that when we score women and men for interviews, we are not like being biased because of the historical statistics of income. I think that is something that is going to be more fair when we judge between men and women for the same position. That's my take on that.
Oh, cool. Thank you. And then Sabrina, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, so following up from other amazing speakers, I think at Half the Sky, we work with companies that put diversity and inclusion at the heart of what they do as an organization. And I think the first thing that organizations need to do is embrace diversity, as focusing on creating a diverse organization. You empower everyone to participate and flourish regardless of gender, race, age, or sexual orientation. So that's the inclusion part that is, I believe, if I'm the CEO of the organization, I'll put it above the diversity. Inclusion is extremely important. And I think that the second thing is companies can also focus on putting their people first and leading with empathy. The best companies know that they are nothing without the people that dedicate themselves to making a great product or delivering a great service. So treating staff as they are just expendable during COVID or even before COVID or after COVID is not going to be effective. The best talent would just avoid companies that don't treat their staff with the respect that they deserve. And it shows. There's a lot of news from companies that, they fire hundreds of staff through a 20-minute phone call. I don't think anyone will join that company ever again, no matter how much money they put on the table.
Excellent, excellent. That definitely echoes some of my sentiments there as well, personally. So let's move on to the next section. So obviously, we focusing on women in tech. And just think about how to expand women's roles in developing, the technology industries. Many industries are rapidly transforming, using automation, digitization to accelerate growth post-pandemic. But what kind of mindset skills will be needed to take advantage of these emerging opportunities? Agnes, let me start with you.
Thank you, Lee. I just also want to share that, one of the recent projects that we have executed with the Hong Kong Science Park for the Technology Leaders of Tomorrow. Basically, it's a program that wanted to recruit very passionate recent graduates with PhD or master or degree in STEM subjects, regardless of gender, of course, to work for the park companies. And when we sat down with the hiring team, they list out four competencies that they wanted us to screen all the candidates for. So the very number one that they really wanted is the passion for technology. And secondly is the entrepreneurship mindset. So I think these are the two core competencies, or you so-called the soft skills, that I think nowadays we as a human worker can provide companies with. You can probably do a lot of automation with all the processes, but I think these two core skills, so-called, or mindset, are irreplaceable by machines or robots. And that is really what we all cherish about, which is to create and to innovate. Yeah. And automation is actually happening now. So we do need to take control of the situation and yeah, be creative and innovative. Yeah, whether we are working as an entrepreneur or entrepreneur. Yeah, even corporates that we are working with, they talk about design thinking, creating values internally, and stimulate ideas, doing hackathon, and all that stuff to stimulate new ideas within the organization. So I think we are going to like have a like the fourth digitization journey, the industrialization, whereby human and machine are going to work hand in hand. So yeah, I think that is a great opportunity for young girls as well, as I think women are generally more creative than men, I think. So yeah, I mean, just use our imagination and create the opportunity for ourselves. Yeah. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. And I was smiling all throughout that because I'm currently a technology leader who's hiring, and basically everything you said I'm currently hiring for. So, I can definitely endorse that answer. We go to Virginia.
Sorry, I was on mute. So in terms of I think mindsets when it comes to automation, digitization, I think the first thing I wanted to say with mindsets was, I mean, unless you're very seasoned technology professionals, I feel like a lot of people have fear, you know, of adopting to technology, and I was one of them. I never thought one day I would actually be a technology investor. It's quite amazing for me. When I first moved to China, I think 8 years ago, I didn't even know how to use an iPhone. I was a BlackBerry user, so even that was quite intimidating. I think you know, going back to the comment that I made earlier, that how, you know, what I noticed was that people who've actually been in traditional industry, especially anything which is physical and retail orientated, have been actually hugely hit. And I think this is actually an opportunity, you know, for us to, in a way, migrate online, right? But I think in terms of I think the question was mindsets and skill sets. I think that the first mindset is that it's not as hard as you think, and I think that technology is always meant to be a platform. It's always meant to be an instrument. It's not meant to replace and substitute you know, everything. It's just a tool. And so I think the first mindset is about you know, taking away that fear. To be honest, I'll give you an example. You know, I haven't been able to see a lot of my team for more than a year. A lot of them are in Indonesia, they're in China. And, you know, we've been using, you know, WhatsApp and obviously WeChat and stuff, right? And then Zoom essentially got banned in China. So we can't even use Zoom for calls. And so, you know, in January, all of us partners decided to start using Lark. Lark is essentially a kind of a, what is the closest thing? It's kind of like a mix between Slack. It's kind of like a Slack and with all kinds of other functions in them, like with Zoom functions in them and everything. And I remember my resistance to it in the early days, because my resistance to it was simply because I didn't know how to work it, you know, and I didn't really necessarily want it to, you know, to affect our, you know, efficiency, which we have become so efficient on WeChat and WhatsApp. But the amazing thing is that, you know, yeah, like I said, you know, a couple months after using it, now I don't know how we never had it. Like, I don't know how we lived, you know, without it. So I think the first thing is openness and willingness to actually figure out what tools work for you. I think that's the first thing. You know, and then I think the second thing, you know, in terms of actual skills, you know, one of the things that that I noticed is, during this time is a lot of people are going back, to basics, taking courses, etc. We started to actually invest, in a lot of ed tech, because we actually started to realize that, this was actually, in a way, ed tech was very nascent in Southeast Asia before. And we actually started to realize that this was actually a really turning point for ed tech in the region. I think the pandemic. And, we've invested, all the 2 ed tech startups we invested in was actually all focused on technology education, one for adults and professionals, focusing on only 2 things, how to be a developer and then how to be a technology product manager, and everything's online. And then the other one was actually for children, for K-12. So, I think, in terms of digitization, a lot of it, I think, is going back to basics. It was me basically during the pandemic trying to figure out together with a designer, how to make sure our website worked, how to make sure our servers worked. And I'm literally the last person on earth to be looking at these kinds of things, right? So, and using, hopefully the crisis as an opportunity to actually upgrade. So a lot of the things we're seeing, let's not even talk about us as professionals, but what I'm actually seeing, across the region, even, we've also invested a lot in what we call the digitalization of the mom and pop space, across Southeast Asia. And what we're seeing during the pandemic is even mom and pop merchants, in places like Indonesia, places like Thailand and Philippines, I think they call them warungs in Indonesia, they call them sari stores in the Philippines. I think even merchants like that, they are actually starting to, digitally procure, right? Using, simple things like ledger programs, retail management systems, point of sale systems to slowly digitize. Part of that is obviously driven by cost, and having lower prices. But I think it just shows that digitization sometimes can be easier than what we think. And I think and just finding, what is the right tool for you. So that's what I would suggest people. I think if someone like me can use Lark, I think anybody can try to use anything. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. I'm going to have to look that up now. We use Slack a lot, but I'm intrigued. We use Slack and Teams, so see how they come together.
Lark, the reason why we use Lark is because Lark can be used in China, whereas Slack cannot. Yeah, and actually Lark has actually very advanced document functions as well. So yeah, see things you learn.
Awesome. And Sabrina, it'd be rude of us to speak about hiring and mindset without going to you. What are your thoughts?
Yes. Thank you for the amazing sharing, Virginia, and very insightful. Thank you, Agnes, as well. So I think for me, 2020 has proven to all of us, change is really the only constant. And for many companies, you can see adapting to the changes, brought on by the pandemic was really the only option. They either adapted or went out of business. Those who adapted survived, and some are even, to be honest, thriving in this current environment. So I think for all of us, we also need to adopt this survival mentality, as without it, navigating the new age of work will become even more challenging. So, and many experts have said that, right? We're entering into the digital economy, and as Witness and Amina share as well, the reality is we are already in it. So adapting to this new reality is extremely essential. And I think the second, mindset that I always share is, a growth mindset. So you may ask me, what is a growth mindset? So growth mindset means that you're able to deal with disruption and manage the change. You embrace the change and you do something about it. So when I was interviewing the youngest CEO at Mercer for one of our Women in Leadership interview series, so she said to me, change is inevitable, and be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So you must be comfortable with not knowing everything about everything. And also we need to educate ourselves in order to stay relevant in the workforce, and we need to stay educated and grow as we progress forward in our field. And I think the other mindset or skills that I would say is, no matter what you do, be technology savvy. So, and one of the skills that I highly recommend everybody to learn right now will be data analytics skills. So how are you going to make sense of the data to be a valid business case and explain it to the business and potentially solve the problem will be a highly valuable skill set. And last but not the least, we have to retrain, relearn, and reskill now.
I definitely agree with all of that. Thanks for sharing, Sabrina. And just Sabrina, staying with you. So one of the unfortunate facts is obviously, I think women globally represent less than 20% of workers in tech and STEM related jobs. What can be done to encourage more women to within these sectors?
Yeah, great question. So I think, despite you can see there's an influx of women stepping into traditionally male-dominated fields, for example, law, medicine, and business, far fewer women are becoming scientists and engineers. And also there's been a lot of attention on the lack of women in STEM fields for a number of years now. But yes, the situation remains pretty much the same. So I would say there are two major problems. Number one is a lack of diversity that discouraged women in this field. And number two is the labor force issue. As the reality is there's just not enough women taking up the technical skills to build a career in STEM. But I believe, as we all can agree, all the panelists, our world becomes increasingly digital. We need a greater number of workers who are knowledgeable in technology and science fields. And one of the funny things is, I'm sure you guys can imagine as well, when we think of engineering, we will probably imagine a man in an overall, steel-toe boot, wiping his hand on a greasy cold handkerchief, or a group of bro coders hacking away in the basement. So in my opinion, to encourage more women into the STEM sectors, we need to really build connections with the talent pool or community of female tech talent, which is what Half the Sky and also Virginia's She Loves Tech are doing at the moment. And I think number two is we need to create a more visible female tech role model, because we can't be what we can't see. And I think number three, which I think is extremely important, is just listen. Listen to what women actually want and what they need and the challenges that they face when they enter into STEM field, and provide the support. And I think the last thing that I want to share is engage with young girls in STEM early. That would be my thought.
Agree. Thank you. And Agnes, was you very much a woman in STEM? What are your views?
I would say that I also wanted to share that in Hong Kong, together with IEEE, Women in Engineering Society, since 2015, we organized ourselves to start going into secondary schools, girls' schools, and really share our career as an engineer with our younger self. And it's been a wonderful journey with other we members, and I would say those young girls are at a great time to hold on. Okay, I was sharing that since 2015 we start visiting schools that are women's schools, girls' schools, and share our career as engineers, and help them to explore different career options. In engineering field, in IT, and in government. I would say it's been transformational, because girls at this age, like 12 to 18, they have to choose what they wanted in life, right? Being the degree subject. And I think this is the key moment that we try to influence that decision. Whether they wanted to take a science stream or more like an art stream, but ultimately they have to love what they have chosen, and really do something about creating impact, right, for the world. And I think being in a technological role, women are more empowered to make changes, because now you're working with men. It's predominated by men, basically, like engineering and IT. Sad to say, but that's the case. That's what I see. Yeah, women and men can work hand in hand. Basically, you can do wonders. Yeah, to create things like power plants. Like I was a designer for a power plant before at Aviva.
Awesome.
So I would say the sky is the limit. As yeah, half the sky is half the sky. Yeah, women can do anything, just like men. You should go for it. I think equip yourself with the skills and make an impact, just like the level playing field is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And a great plug there for Half the Sky. Sabrina will be sending you a marketing check shortly after this. So I guess my last question on this point is kind of taking it to that one step further, where we go from women in STEM to then obviously off on their entrepreneurial journey and so on. And, you know, I think only 12% of decision makers at VC funds are women. And I think, is it just 2.3% of VC funding goes to female founders? You know, what is the impact of that? And how is the industry trying to change this gender funding gap? And I guess that's an obvious point to go to you, Virginia, to start to answer that.
Thank you, Lee. I spend so much of my mornings, my nights, I think, thinking about this. I'm actually writing a piece right now called "Do we change women or do we change the game?" You know, in relating to VC. Okay, a few things. You know, in terms of data. So less than 12%, I think, of I think VC partners in the US are female, and I think in China the number is more close to 18%. So China actually has more. In terms of how much money went to companies solely founded by females in Southeast Asia last year, it was 0.9%, so less than 1%. With companies with a female founder, it was 16.5%, but that was very skewed by Ant Financial and Grab, right? Who have female co-founders. So obviously, you know, the disparity is wide, and so I've been asking myself, actually, more importantly, why, right? Apart from, you know, what people see as just blatant discrimination, etc., so on and so forth. So a couple, I think a couple of reasons, right? I think there's a lot of data saying out there that women actually build more sustainable and more revenue positive business and more profitable businesses. That is true. And so, like I said, when I was writing this article, I asked myself, actually, then why are they raising less, right? And I think it's because in many ways in venture capital at early stage, you're not actually really evaluating revenue or profitability at all. You know, at early stage, I think what you're really looking at is the market positioning of the startup. You know, how not just how innovative or how unique the technology is, but very often, you know, the market share or the market dominance, so to speak, or that crazy growth potential. So one of the things that I've had to do when working with founders in general, and I mean founders in general, but I think a lot of times more women founders than male founders, is actually really, as in what I'm really realizing is that there's really a perception gap between the investor and the investee. And I don't think either side necessarily knows the perception gap, or I think the investor knows very clearly this is not what they're looking for, but the investee doesn't necessarily know why this is not what they're looking for. So I think, you know, the one of the things that I spend a lot of time with entrepreneurs, whether or not I actually end up investing in them, is actually really showcasing where this perception gap lies. Sometimes it can actually be fixed very easily, and sometimes requires more thinking. So I have literally a lot of examples of this, because we've done it quite a number of times now. So I think, you know, the first thing is, like, for example, we invested in a company called Frontier Markets right after us. TPG's Rise Fund came in. It was their first investment in India. When I first saw this CEO, her name is Ajita Shah, pretty completely amazing woman. I saw her on a stage in Sharjah, of all places in the world, at a startup competition organized by the Queen of Sharjah. It's like December 2017. And she was essentially using women as all women's rural sales forces to sell energy products, right? Solar lights and fans and all the stuff. So she called herself a rural energy access social enterprise. But this woman was like dynamite, okay? You know, she's so impressive, right? She got off the stage. I went up to her and I said, hey, hi, I really like what you're doing. But I said, what you're doing is not a rural energy social enterprise. What you're really doing is last mile distribution. It's just that the first product that you started with was energy. And over the next 2 years, we worked with her to basically do two things: to change the market positioning from that to last mile distribution and last mile commerce, and then to really help, you know, and then I put in that first check again to really build for her to build her real-time data systems and technology, and so that every single rural sales force, every woman in this rural sales force actually was digitally enabled, had a smartphone, so all the orders were real time. And to really help her to understand her business from a data analytics perspective, I brought in a whole data analytics team, etc., so on and so forth. Today, she's oversubscribed and she is being looked at by loads and loads of venture capitalists. But the point was that, and she was very revenue positive and more or less breaking even from like even during those days. But she was struggling so much to raise capital because, and what she was doing wasn't necessarily wrong. It's just that what the market wanted and what she was, the way she was presenting herself was actually at odds. You know, I have like 1,000, you know, other examples of this, you know, and increasingly we have more and more successful examples, right? And more recently we invested in a startup called Binyar Academy. Tech in Asia just called them one of Indonesia's 50 rising startups. We're very proud of that, actually. But again, when they first were raising money, and I mean the CEO, again, you know, she's dynamite. She was the first product VP out of Gojek, so she knows how to build products. She built Go Live, Go Food, the whole thing. But when she first started to come out, again, she had great revenue. She had $1 million in revenue. She was very EBITDA positive, right, for a very early stage business, and yet she was not getting the kind of traction that I would expect someone like that to get. And the reason for that was because there was something, her model was online, offline. She's now pivoted to fully online. And a lot of VCs won't touch anything which is really offline. But all it needed for us to do was do a bit of work and actually say, hey, you know, we need to see what your product roadmap is going to look like. We need to fully integrate this stuff. I mean, the team is super capable. They did it in a month and now people are chasing her. So it's awesome. But what I'm trying to say is that what I'm realizing that gap is not just because of bias. That gap is because a lot of times entrepreneurs don't necessarily know that what VC investors are chasing is a very certain specific type of growth, revenue, and positioning. And to be very honest, what I've started to realize upon reflection is that model of what VC success looks like was never ever built around the way women build businesses. They were always built around the way certain types of men build businesses. And now that has become the gold standard of the industry, which we are all supposed to follow. So I think I think that was just the first thing. The second thing is in many ways about social networks, you know, and the access I think that female entrepreneurs have or don't have. So very interestingly, I did an experiment recently without meaning to do an experiment. I brought one of our portfolio companies, entrepreneur to Singapore, and I introduced her to an investor who is a very famous investor and part of what I didn't realize, really an old boys network. In a week, she struggled for 3 years. In a week, she raised $3 million. Okay, and I saw how the good old boys network actually worked. It was pretty beautiful, actually, and pretty slick. I mean, it was literally like he opened his network. They met her for like a couple hours each, and then before we knew it, the round was filled. And I literally thought, when I look at all the large funding rounds in Southeast Asia or in the world going on this way, this is exactly how it works. So the question for me is, you know, how do entrepreneurs and also young VCs, emerging VCs like myself, build some of those networks? They don't have to be old boys networks. They can just be networks, you know, to create the same kind of buzz. And that's a journey that I'm going on. But the third piece that I wanted to say about why not having enough funding going to women is actually more dangerous than we think, right? It's because I just feel like a lot of I think bias is actually a very relative thing. It's a very personal thing. I think people as humans, right, we invest in the things that we associate with. So for example, someone like me will never touch an esports company. I've been presented it before. I've been presented esports companies by really amazing women entrepreneurs, and I've just said no. It's just something that, you know, it doesn't fit my thesis, doesn't appeal to me. A very good example is I remember in 2017 or 2018, it was the year of e-cigarettes. And I remember like there was like in 1 year something like some crazy amount, like 200 billion, something ridiculous, pouring into e-cigarettes. And that's something, again, I would never touch. It doesn't fit my thesis. There's no gender lens. 90% of the world's smokers are men, actually. But what I realized that people invest in what they can associate with. So if you have less female investors and less money pouring into the things that women are actually think are important, that's a serious issue for our world. In fact, many people ask me, you know, Teja is Asia's first gender lens fund. What the heck does that mean, right? We invest in both male and female. Does that mean you only invest in women entrepreneurs? I said no, but I said investing with a gender lens means deploying capital, you know, using the lens of women or using a gender lens, which means that pouring capital into the things that we think are important, and that's the piece which actually I worry about the most. It goes beyond a personal level of who you're actually putting money into. At the end of the day, as an investor, you need to go for the best talent, male or female. But what increasingly I'm concerned about is where the capital is what we're pouring into the capital, you know, too. I have a lot of respect for investors like fermata here, for example, who are pouring, you know, investment into very sort of underserved segments, right? Like women's health, for example, because I realize we can put a man and a spaceship on Mars, but we haven't been able to stop women dying in childbirth. That's bullshit. It's not because the technology doesn't exist. It's because we have no will to do it. And that's the reason for me why, you know, we need to balance out both the amount of women deploying capital as well as to what we're actually deploying capital to. Sorry, I know that was like a long spiel, but it's just something which occupies my mind so much. I thought I wanted to share it.
I'm very grateful you did share that. We've got to get you on a TEDx and give you a full hour, I think, just on that topic. But thank you very much, Virginia. Very, very insightful. Amina, Nadine has a question. Or let's go to Amina, and Nadine, if you can put your. Oh no, she's just clapping. Sorry, I thought she put her hand up for the question. Amina, over to you.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that the timing wise, are we okay?
We're running over a little bit, but I'm okay for time. Do any of our speakers have a hard stop at 12 or 12:05, or do we have a little bit of a run time?
Yeah, I do have to go in a bit, unfortunately, but I can say something for this topic.
Yeah.
I was very inspired by what Virginia shared. And in a way, I think femtech industry is one of the very first industrial market that really requires women's input. So in terms of like, I mean, you know, when I first started the fundraising, you know, investing around women's health, femtech in Japan, no one really listened. But now that the government started to move, then policies started to change, and there's an obvious money, capital going to this new industry. And then there's estimate that it's going to be a 50 billion market by 2025. The number of companies increased from 50 in 2012 globally to over 500 globally. In Japan, in 2 years, the number of companies doubled from 50 to 100. I've got a map here. It's a market map of femtech companies in Southeast Asia, and Singapore has the most number of companies. But you know, it's become sort of obvious that this has been a blue ocean. A new opportunities there, and then I think it's going to be a great opportunity to sort of like, you know, encourage women to sort of get into this industry, because in order for this industry to blossom, men it's not like men can just do it by themselves, right? I think we have to collaborate and work together. So it's going to be a good sort of not a case study, but opportunity for getting more money into women's health and also into female entrepreneur. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amina. Right, let's move on then to our next question. And sticking with the theme of gender equality, obviously it's a very well documented statistic is that it could take, 257 years for the gender gap to be closed. You know, what can be done to accelerate this? How do you hold leaders and decision makers accountable for this? Sabrina, let's start with you.
Sure. I'll make it quick. So I think for Half the Sky, how we hold leaders and decision makers accountable is by showcasing and promoting companies who are walking the talk, you know, who really have the infrastructure and commitment to support women in every stage of their career life cycle. In this way, we actually find it way more effective than naming and shaming those companies who don't, because for those companies who do not walk the talk, they will start losing our talent to their competitors on our platform. And we also provide transparency on companies' policies and initiatives only for women, and we have 12. So for example, flexible working arrangement, equal pay initiatives, return to work policies, mentorship and sponsorship program, and many more. And we also made it clear to the companies we talked to in our community that if the companies do not have any of the 12 policies and initiatives, they are not allowed to post jobs on our platform and have access to our community. But we actually provide consultancy services to those companies who want to work on their D&I agenda.
Wonderful, I like it. Virginia.
Yes. Sorry, Lee, do you mind repeating the question?
Yeah. I will keep it short. How do we close the gender gap and not have it take 257 years?
I spent a good number of my years running Lean in China, which was the nonprofit in China, and it was just like a very frequent question for us. I don't think we can wait for the world to close the gap for us. I think women, you know, Hillary Clinton says, you know, that the women's movement is really the last unfinished business of the 21st century. I think that women, we have to step up and finish it. But what does that actually mean? You know, I think in big and small ways. I think, you know, I think every time a woman decides to start something, build a business, you know, shape the world in her own lens, I think that is a big step forward. I think something else, which I learned, by the way, I think it's a great lesson that I learned from the Old Boys Club. I watched my father's Old Boys Club as well. They're all really old. They're like 70 plus and they still like, you know, are like that. Is really to step up and really support each other in ways and go out of your way to actually do that. You know, when I was running the nonprofit, we worked with thousands of young women, you know, in China, and it was a huge incentive of the organization to push up as many of them as we could, whether it was writing recommendation letters, whether it was opening your networks, whether, you know, it was really, you know, going out of your way, you know, to find somebody else a mentor. The same things that we actually do now for our portfolio companies, right? You know, but the fact that I have an economic incentive to actually do that for our portfolio companies, but I really think that you know, the way we close the gap, first and foremost, is not to expect anybody else to close it for us, but to really see how we can push forwards and close the gap for each other. You know, I think of men the way they fight for each other at war, you know, and I mean that in the most inspirational way. And we need to fight for each other because there's nobody else who's going to fight for us. And you can start off with, I mean, I think mentoring is great. Sponsoring is even better. And I think, you know, funding, bringing all of your networks, you know, to get behind somebody you actually believe in, you know, is important. And when I say go out of your way, I mean go out of your way. I think of the people who have gone out of their way for me, I think of the people I've gone out of my way for, and it all pays off. Trying is just not enough. And I get actually very, very distressed and very hurt by women who actually tell me that the gap doesn't exist, I'm not part of it, or in fact, I'm actually very okay being rejected by men. As in when it comes to funding, I'm pretty chill about it. And actually, interestingly, we've seen a lot more male investors in recent times, you know. But when I think like when a woman actually doubts, you know, our thesis, sometimes I mean, I don't show it, but sometimes I do feel a bit hurt, because I'm like, if you yourself don't believe in the female economy, then how do we actually, then how are we actually going to do this? You know, you got to put your money where your mouth is. Put your money where your mouth is, you know. Unfortunately, I don't think we're doing enough of that. I don't think we're doing enough of that as mentors, as friends. I don't think we're doing enough of that as investors. We are not spending our wealth, you know, supporting each other. I mean, that's something which is very, I would say in this whole journey of being a venture capitalist, and this is probably the first time I've ever said it in public, that is actually the piece which has disappointed me the most. Obviously, nobody expects a free ride from anybody else, but I think we need to check our perception there. And one of the reasons why I built Teja, very, very simply, was because I wanted to prove the investment case of the female economy. The reason why we're not supporting each other the way we should, and why capital isn't supporting this industry the way it should, is because the bias there is not even a personal bias. The bias there is that investing in women is somehow concessionary. It is not as good as a blockchain investment. It is not as good as a normal venture capital investment. Investing in women is somewhat concessionary. And until we change the narrative, by the way, through performance, not by propaganda, that will continue. And that's the reason why I built Teja Ventures, because I really wanted to prove that business case. And because I knew if we did, then the floodgates of capital would actually open towards the whole industry. And I think every time, you know, I hear something about, okay, it's social, it's concessionary, I think my heart sinks. I feel like the only place in the world where I have seen otherwise is actually China, where everybody understands this is a fully commercial opportunity, probably the biggest in our lifetime. So again, forgive me, Lee, for going on my spiel. It's just something that I care about so much, yeah.
All good, it's a great spiel, so not a reason to apologize at all. Amina, Agnes, anything to add on top of what Sabrina and Virginia have shared?
I think they have covered pretty much everything they want to say.
Wonderful. Agnes, any additional thoughts, or should we move on to the last question?
It's been wonderful sharing by Virginia, also very personal one. I think I just wanted to highlight that being supportive, I mean, between women, I think that's the key, right? Sponsoring women that are younger than yours, that are more promising than yours. Sometimes I also see this somewhat happening in a corporate world. It's like women are not sponsoring women somehow. It's a bit strange, yeah. And I can see that men support men and women, but women on the top don't necessarily sponsor the women, the younger ones. That I think that can be changed so that people, have to move on the corporate ladder somewhat. And for the funding part, yesterday I had a mentoring session with one of my mentors from one of my investors, and in fact they're actually talking about women VC, VC with a gender lens investment thesis, and I think they are working on it. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Agnes. And then I guess the last question I have is, you know, very much tied into thriving in this new world, but also it'd be remiss not to tie into this year's theme for International Women's Day, you know, choose to challenge. What would each of you ask us all to challenge as we try to build a fairer and more just world? Virginia, we'll start with you again.
It's a simple one for me. Like I said, you know, I challenge everybody here to go out of your way and open the door for somebody else, ideally another woman.
Succinct. Wonderful. Amina.
Yeah, so I personally believe that we all have to accept that there are differences, right? Like we shouldn't just assume the fact that we're all equal. There are biological differences that it's the fact. And when it comes to sort of work equality and all that, we tend to sort of forget the fact that we're biologically designed differently. And therefore, people, depending on the life stage they're in, we have challenges and issues that we face when it comes to our health and wellness. And so, yeah, recognizing that our own individual biological needs is probably the start, for me at least.
Oh, I like that perspective. Thank you for sharing. Agnes?
Yes, how men and women are created not equally. The biologically different, obviously, for different functions. Yeah, but I think I think fair is a very, very critical term in a sense that even when I look at like how recruitment are being executed, both for my career and also for our client, we always wanted to build in something that can de-bias that hiring process such that is fair and you know can be audited in a way, yeah, so that is based on skills and competencies rather than perception and personal bias. I think that's also one of the mission that I think New Fast is founded, is really based on science and more on fairness, yeah, to put the right people in the right job. Yeah, I think that will make everyone yeah, have an equal opportunity to contribute, yeah, in a meaningful way.
Yep, wonderful. Agree. Thank you for sharing. And last, Sabrina.
Yes, my one is very simple. So I will ask all of you to continue to choose to challenge the status quo and continue to change the workplace better for women each and every day.
Short, sweet, and very succinct. And again, couldn't agree more. Otherwise, if you just want to type in the chat if there are any questions for the wonderful group we have. Give everyone a minute. Anyone want to put up their hand and volunteer? Or if not, I will take it that everyone is in agreement with what our speakers had to say, and there's nothing more to add. Oh, in that case, Sabrina, any closing remarks? You may be able to hear my daughter in the background.
That's amazing. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up very soon so you can take care of her. So thank you so much for joining us today. And the diversity employers on Half the Sky are hiring, and they're committed to empower women to thrive within their organizations. They provide flexible working arrangement, equal pay initiatives, return to work policies, leadership development programs, paid parental leave, and many more. Their jobs are listed on our platform, so please go check them out. We also have a lot of resources to share with you on our platform, so make sure you sign up on halftheskyasia.com. It's completely free. You'll also receive exclusive event invites like this one, job alerts, thought leadership content, and resources. And sharing is caring. Please share it with your friends, family, or any woman you know who will benefit from it. And I know a lot of audience actually asked us about the mentorship program. Once you become the member of Half the Sky, we'll send out the newsletter for any updates for the mentorship program. So thank you so much again for our male airlines and our moderator today, Lee at Aviva. Wonderful job. And all the panelists, Virginia, Dr. Amina, and Agnes, for your time. Stay safe, everybody, and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
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 Yeah, bye.